Music, dance, theater. It's time to take a seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez. Hear from performers, producers, presenters, and creators who enrich our lives in the performing arts. Who's on stage? Here is Tom Alvarez to introduce you.
Hello, and welcome to On the Aisle with yours truly, Tom Alvarez. My guest on today's episode is actor, intimacy director, singer, educator Claire Wilcher. Join me now as I go on the aisle for my conversation with Claire. Claire Wilcher.
Tom Alvarez.
It's Wilcher.
It is.
Oh, God.
You got it.
God, I was like, oh, God, I think I'm going to... Is it Wilcher? Wilcher?
Yeah.
It's controversial, your last name, isn't it?
You know what I appreciate is that you didn't check before and you just thought, I'm going to wing it.
I think somebody...
It's brave.
Somebody, I just got tired of people correcting me. It's Wilcher.
Yeah.
It's Wilcher. I said, all right already. Anyway... Yeah, I get my name mispronounced all the time.
Yeah.
You know, any name that's anywhere near being ethnic or foreign, it's like people panic.
Yeah.
You know? And I even had a friend from Tennessee who once said, well, I can't pronounce whatever that your name is. I'm going to just call you Alurad.
No.
I said, well, that's fine.
Well, that's more complicated than Alvarez. I mean, what's the problem?
People think, well, am I supposed to roll that R and in Alvarez? So that's really how it's pronounced. But, do you think I'm going to spend my whole life? I've made a decision, maybe my whole life.
Yep. Decided
that I'm just going to pronounce it the way the Hoosiers. Alvarez.
Alvarez. Well,
right.
I'm Claire Wilcher, but a lot of people, especially in Indiana, say Welcher.
So good to have you on. I've been trying to make this happen. I finally stalked you at our gym, Versailles Pavilion, and I thought, why is she ghosting me? It's like she didn't want to be on.
Listen.
Anyway, you were a busy lady, and I know because I cover theater and the arts, as you know, and so I see and I'm aware of everything. I try to stay on top of things, but you are all over the place, and you have been since you came back from. Let's go over that. We go way back.
Yep.
I don't know when do you remember how it is you and I met?
I do not. I really don't. And I think it's that way with a lot of folks in theater here in town because the community is so connected that it just kind of... I've been working in town with that grad school gap for a little while, but I've been working in town for over 20 years. And I mean, I know people from going back that far, and it's so bizarre. So I know we met a long time ago.
Where I first saw you in an indie French show at Comedy Sports.
Oh, okay.
That's why I, quote, discovered you.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I discovered you.
You knew who I was, yeah.
You had already been discovered because you were really, really very popular in the Comedy Sports scene at the time.
Yeah.
And then I watched you move into the legitimate theater.
Oh, yes. Yes, with the accent.
And then I interviewed you at least twice and wrote about you a couple times.
Yeah.
And then when did you hit the road? Because you'd made this pledge to yourself. Remind me about that.
When I went on my road trip?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I took an RV trip in the summer of 2015. And I kind of used to count everything as before RV trip and after RV trip. And now it's kind of, since I then went away to grad school for 3 or 4 years, now my time in Indianapolis has really been broken up. But yeah, at the time I was working for Comedy Sports. I had been working for Comedy Sports for several years. And I got a harebrained idea, since there are Comedy Sports cities all over the country that perform this format that is this kind of specialized franchise of improv comedy and classes and all this kind of stuff. I had worked for them forever. I got a wild idea that I wanted to travel to all the cities and live in an RV while I did it and teach improv and talk about improv all over the country. And it's when I really first started self-editing some like YouTube. I had a YouTube channel that was terrible, Tom, because I taught myself how to edit everything, and I was very bad at it. But it was very like kind of grassroots campaign. I crowdsourced a ton of money, and I went on the road, and it was really, really wonderful. And it was kind
really
of
supported it.
It was a shock. And I would be lying if I said I didn't feel any sort of residual strange feelings about the help that I got, because
what did that entail?
I just wonder if I delivered what I needed to deliver. And there's a whole thing around crowdsourcing and around artists crowdsourcing and what that means. And there are lots of different schools of thought about it. And mostly, I'm about 99% really proud of it. And it was the time of my life. And then 1% of me is like, oh, I wonder if people are still mad at me, which makes no sense.
Oh, I don't know that I've heard that.
Well, it's just maybe my own sense of security.
Okay.
Yeah. Like,
am I worthy?
The legitimacy of what I did, even though I marketed
fraud syndrome and all that stuff.
All that good stuff. Yeah. All that good stuff that I like to think I've moved beyond. But I think that little 1% of me is always going to be there.
The money thing is loaded anyway.
Absolutely.
I think you ask people to, artists have a really hard time valuing themselves. Right?
Because the world around us doesn't really do a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the world around us now.
There's like guilt and shame. We got enough of that anyway.
I know.
You have to ask people to support our missions, efforts, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's hard.
It is hard because we're still kind of not part of the mainstream, income society. It's still looked at
really
like that.
I think that proved to you, did it not, that you really are quite beloved. You have a lot of fans.
It was certainly was very validating, and it made me realize, how much people love me, and then also how much I really love people. I'm a big people person, and I know that's such a weird buzzword, but I really do truly love people in general. I can't help it.
I'm so glad that you just said, I was so humbled, because that is such an oxymoron when people say, I'm humbled. What does that mean? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the minute you say you're humble, that kind of takes it away. Until you say the word, we believe it.
There you go.
I believe that you're humble until you're like, I'm super humble.
If you have to say humble or humility, then you're not.
Then you're not.
Chances are.
Yeah, and you're trying to convince yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of times.
Exactly. But back to that, how much did you raise?
I think I raised about $31,000.
Goodness.
Yeah, and it allowed me to buy a very, very used RV. Cover it in marketing materials for Comedy Sports itself, because I kind of went as a representative.
Did you outfit it?
We remodeled it, my mom and myself. We redid it all inside, because it was from about 1995, so you can imagine the interior was
adventures you
probably.
Must have had.
I did. I had great times.
Yeah. Did you take a pet with you?
I did. I took my dog Sophie.
That's right.
At the time, she was there, and she was there for the first leg of the trip for me. So she went with me from all the way up the East Coast to Chicago. And then she was an old gal even at the time. And so I left her then in my mother's care. So she was nice to take her, because
Sophie's no longer amongst us.
She is no longer amongst us. I know. We lost her several years ago. She was such a good girl.
Yeah. So she was a real trooper, though. Right?
She was. She hung in there. And then I just recognized that it was not for her any longer, especially getting out west. We had long stretches of time where, we would be without a lot of water, or we would be, without the creature comforts that an old puppy deserves.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, well, that's animal cruelty, Claire.
No, that's why I left her at my mom's house.
Poor little thing.
I know, buddy. She did great.
You didn't keep her in that van, did you?
No.
Locked up when you went on your gigs?
Absolutely not. Actually, we if we were plugged into like in a campground or something, she had all the creature comfort. She had air conditioning. She was fine.
I bet she became like famous too along the way.
She was much beloved.
Oh, really?
Much deserved, yeah.
So you completed it? Did you do everything you set out to do?
I was on the road for 4 months. My plan was to take leftover funds and go to Europe, because at the time there were 2 Comedy Sports cities in Europe. There was one in Berlin Berlin and one in Manchester, UK. I believe the one in Berlin is no longer in operation, but Manchester still is. But my RV, in all of its used glory, and her name was Large Marge, she broke down several times, and so the repairs for that wiped me out. And also I broke my ankle halfway along the road in Yellowstone National Park. So that was a little out-of-pocket expenses, too.
I seem to remember. Did you vlog all that?
I did, yeah.
I remember. Okay,
I sure
it's
did.
All coming back. What year was that?
2015.
Wow.
Which is hard to believe. It's been 10 years.
You know, that is such a one-in-a-lifetime adventure.
It really, truly was. I'm so grateful.
Just be proud of having made that happen, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I had a lot of help, of course, and I couldn't have done it without my community, but I truly was proud of the way that I just said, you know what, I'm going to try something. What about this crazy idea? And at the time, my very best friend in the world, Beth, who was terminally ill, I had talked about it with her at length in 2014, and she sadly passed in the fall of 2014. And before she died, she had told me to do it. She said, just do it. I mean, life is so short.
Coming from
and she was dealing with all of that. So she died, and then I went, I pitched it.
Who is this? Do I know her?
You don't. No, she was from my hometown. Her name's Beth.
And your hometown is where?
Tell City. It is 3 hours south of here.
What's it known for?
Pretzels and furniture. Tell City Furniture. If you're an antique furniture collector, Tell City Furniture is a famous furniture. Do
they have a pretzel festival? They have to.
They don't. We have a Schweitzer Fest, which is the Swiss Fest.
Okay.
But we used to make Tell City pretzels, which are still made, but they're not made in Tell City anymore.
Was there a Tell City beauty pageant by any chance?
Oh gosh,
Miss Tell City. This sounds like it'd be.
There was like a Miss. I'm sure there was a Miss Schweitzer Fest. Which I was never in the running for, and that's fine with me. I've never been that kind of gal.
India is filled with all those kind of cool little Americana things.
Oh, yeah.
The pork festival. And
I was just talking about the Little Flower fish fry that's coming up, because I live in Little Flower.
Oh, yeah.
And I love, like, the small town feel of, like, a church fish fry.
Oh, nothing like it. Yeah, I was in Irvington for a long time.
Oh, right on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And Little Flower's right in the
It
shadow.
It is. It is in the shadow of Irvington.
It's got a really, Little Flower it's like artistic and hip and all that.
Yes, with
really cool bungalows. And
little cute bungalows with just a little side of crime.
Yeah.
We've got a little side dish of crime, and that's fine. That's how we like it. Just a little dangerous.
When I lived in Irvington, I'd have to go back and forth to downtown, and it was like police and fire and gunshots, and it was like we're
East Side
city to get from downtown, and unless you went around the highway, right?
Yeah, that takes too long. You just got to go through 10th and just grip the steering wheel. You'll be all right. I've never been afraid.
How long have you been a Little Flower?
When I moved back from grad school, my husband and I moved back, and we found a place to rent by the skin of our teeth.
Your husband? You have a husband?
I do.
I miss all that.
Well, it happened when I was in Michigan.
Oh, well,
so that's why. I went to Michigan and just had a whole new little life.
Let's go back to the end of the trip and what happened then.
So I got back from Comedy Sports, or from that trip, from the Comedy Sports trip, and I immediately started working at what was theater on the square at the time, and I was there for a couple of years doing marketing and taking care of business there a little bit.
Retired in Mexico.
Yes, he had gone.
Right.
And so he was there before that for a million years, right? And so then I worked there for a couple years.
That's right.
And then I left there and I freelanced per usual. I mean, I've been a freelancer in town for so long that it's kind of old hat now for me to kind of go from gig to gig to gig. And
so I joked about that you're shifting from comedy to the legitimate theater. I mean, there was a time, though, did you make a conscious decision about stretching yourself as an actor?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I had done improv for so many years, and I did musicals with Bob Harbin and Bob Directs for so many years. That was those were kind of my bread and butter.
Some of those? I
did the Full Monty with him first before I really got into any leading roles. I met Bob through doing the Full Monty, and that was in 2008 or 9. And then I did A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Forum with him, and then I did Cabaret with him, and I did Spam-A-Lot with him. So, Bob really gave me, he gave me kind of the confidence. I've always been a confident person, but he really did give me kind of the shot in the arm that I needed to recognize that I could be something other than just the funny character on the side. He gave me leading roles. He believed that, you didn't have to look a certain way to be quote unquote legitimate, as you kind of say, right? And so that was a really wonderful stretch of time where I got to really feel worthy of those kinds of roles. But I'm a person who I crave change. I love change. I'm not afraid of it, and I really enjoy it. So I had that stretch of time. I worked for Theater on the Square, and then I kind of got a little bit idle again, and I thought, I wonder what else I could do. And I had always thought about going back to school, going to graduate school to get my master's in fine arts. And I thought, this would be the time. I mean, if not now, when,
and
right?
Why? Just for the sake of education? Because you were thinking about your financial future, or all the above?
Kind of all of the above. And I also just was getting restless. And I thought I was living with my friend, Mia, who had kind of taken me in, for lack of a better word.
Mia is a comedian as well.
Mia,
Okay.
yeah, Mealy Roberts, who is a brilliant woman and was an owner of Comedy Sports for a really long time. And she let me live with her for a while while I kind of figured it out. And I thought, I'm ready for a change. I have really kind of had so many great opportunities here in town. I felt a little stuck as far as next steps. And I was just really ready for an absolute 180. So I went to grad school auditions to the what's called the URTAs, the Unified Regional Theater Auditions, and those are grad school auditions from all over the country. And it's where you kind of put your hat in the ring and you audition for a ton of people in a ballroom in Chicago, representing colleges, and they kind of then put a star by your name and say, let's chat further. And so you chat with some schools, figure out what's a good fit, and then offers come out, and I ended up going to Michigan State University to get my MFA.
Wow.
Yeah.
That must have been a big boost to you.
It was wonderful. It was hard. It was so hard because
How many of the schools wanted you?
I got final offers from 3 schools.
What were they?
University of Georgia, Athens, and Florida Atlantic is, I think, one of them, and then University of Central Florida. Okay, now there were a few. But Michigan State, to me, was the best fit because their program was heavily influenced by teaching. So I taught just as much as I acted. So in many grad school programs, you kind of you'll take all your classes and maybe you'll teach one class. You'll teach like a theater 101 or whatever, and that will kind of be what is your stipend, and that's how you get paid. You teach one class and maybe it stays super simple. But Michigan State, their program is driven by educators and driven by education. So I took a ton of classes. Obviously, that's what I'm there for, to be an actor, to get a master's of fine arts in acting and in theater. But then I also was a teacher, and we were heavily trained in how to teach college, how to plan curriculums, how to interview for a professorship, what that kind of means. And I've always loved teaching. I've always been an educator, like an informal educator throughout my entire theater career. So it just seemed like the right fit.
What was your undergrad?
My undergrad was in English.
And where?
I went to IU, Bloomington.
Yeah.
My undergrad was in English literature and then also French,
Okay.
with a specialization in French literature. Obviously, really using that in my theater life. That's sarcasm. And then I minored in theater and I minored in business.
How was your French accent?
Très bien. My French accent's actually pretty good.
Did you ever do any characters with a French accent?
I haven't yet.
I
so
bet you do a killer one.
I do.
Yours,
So
good
this is the time to ask for it, I suppose.
Yeah. So, I'm like a lot of people. I just can't get it straight. Is it University of Michigan or Michigan State that you went to? Is it Lansing or in Ann Arbor?
You are.
Oh, I figured it out.
And you know what? It's Lansing. And you are absolutely correct. It is really hard for people to get straight. People mix it up all the time. And Michigan State is, I always say, it's the farm school. And Ann Arbor, University of Michigan is the theater school.
Now, wait a minute. So I'm going to get this wrong, too.
That's okay.
Our mutual friend, Priscilla Lindsay.
Oh, yeah. She used to, well, I think she retired.
Yeah.
She was at University of Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah, so she was Ann Arbor.
Okay.
Priscilla Lindsay, who used to be the artistic director.
Well, she's listening. We're trying to straighten this all out.
We got it.
Okay.
We got it.
Okay, so how was that campus?
Huge. But for me, very small because I was really only in about 2 of the buildings. It's a giant campus. It's a giant school. It's a Research One institution, so it's got a ton of money behind it. And of course, all of that money is going into the agricultural and business buildings. Theater building is old and dusty, but just like the little East Side, we had a lot of love for that building, for that auditorium. I was with a cohort of 8 people, and it was a 3-year program, and I learned so much. It was the one, besides the RV trip, as far as life decisions, I am so happy that I did it. I feel like it really just fully formed me as a human. And
how old were you when you started there?
39. 39.
Okay.
I went to grad school at maybe I was 38. Yeah, 38. And I graduated when I was 41. And I don't know, man. I just really, I love that about myself. I love that I went late because it made grad school really fun and joyful for me because the stakes were low. Yes, and I've always loved school. So I was a fantastic student. I think I was a pretty good teacher.
Do you have good instructors, teachers?
Yes.
Faculty?
Yes, and it was a really unique experience because I could have gone to grad school when I was 22, 23, fresh out of undergrad, but I just didn't know really who I was. I didn't know what kind of actor I was. I didn't know what kind of human I really was. I even auditioned for some grad schools when I was in my 20s, and it just wasn't the time. It wasn't the right time. And this going at 39, at 40, say, it was just a pleasure because I was not afraid of the work. And I also understood that the head of my department made it really clear. He said, it's really hard work, but this is a playground for 3 years. Like, you are opting in to be here for 3 years to learn about yourself.
The old thing about you wanted to be there.
Yeah, I wanted to be there. I wanted the whole experience. And so
you embraced it.
I embraced it. And also because I was also really closer in age to a lot of the faculty than I was to some folks in my cohort, right? So I was teaching undergraduate students for 3-4 years because I stayed on an extra year to be a professor for the university. Wow. I would always joke I could be your mother. And they would always laugh. And I'm like, you don't think I'm that old, but I could be your mom.
Wow. So what did you teach?
Oh, gosh. I taught a little bit of everything. So, okay, here's my laundry list. I taught Theater 101, of course. I taught Advanced Improv for Actors, which is a class I designed myself. I taught a class called Plays as Film. I taught a class called Concepts in the Classroom, talking about how to incorporate theater activities into just like a non-theater classroom. I taught some Shakespeare. I taught Intimacy for Actors, which was weird because it was over Zoom because it was during the COVID days. I taught a lot. I taught theater appreciation. I taught theater history, some lecture, some lab.
That's remarkable.
It was intense. Yeah.
And how was it teaching students?
It was hard. It was, I love the teaching aspect of it. What I don't love is the planning aspect of things. I'm really a shoot from the hip kind of gal. Although I'm a good planner and I'm a good
developing curriculums.
Yes,
and all that.
Yes, and like how to write a syllabus and how to write a rubric.
Do they teach that stuff?
They do. They do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really, the program is so unique because you are given a committee of professors in the department who are with you for all 3 years, and you meet with them and you talk with them, and then
that's why they call it a master's.
Yeah,
degree.
exactly. And you're observed all the time, and that you get feedback all the time. And so it was just it was a great time to be in that position because I was still eager to learn, and I love to learn new things and become good at things, but
So the program concentrated on your studies, but
Yeah.
the way you earned your living was to teach.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
So everything was self-contained.
Everything was self-contained. Yeah.
Is it kind of a conservatory kind of place?
Nope.
No?
It's because to be conservatory, it would be kind of no teaching at all. It would be intensive, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it was not. It was, I would teach as much as I acted. Mm-hmm. And some days I taught more than I acted.
And so were you in main stage plays?
Yeah, I was. I went to school during the COVID years, accidentally, obviously. I started out, I did a year and a half in person. Then we did about 2 semesters virtually. In our final semester, we actually were in person.
Did you find out that you had a lot of bad habits?
Yes. And it was the best. It's honestly, it was so wonderful because that's what...
Because you didn't have a theater training.
Nope.
Okay, so
No.
that's why I asked that.
Yeah.
Okay. So you learned while doing.
Yes. Yeah. All the things that I did that I didn't realize I was doing.
And you picked up from other people on the way.
Yeah. And to have them transparently and directly said to you without any kind of judgment and without any kind of sense of embarrassment, I suppose.
Shame you.
It was so refreshing.
Yeah.
It was so refreshing. And there were, of course, people in my cohort or others who felt shame, but there was no shame placed on anyone.
So what were some of the things that you discovered? Oh my God, I've been doing it that way for such a long time, and now, did you have epiphanies a lot?
Yes, and sometimes those epiphanies, of course, were brought on by professors who were like, and I'm noticing this, so what do you think about that? And your mind would kind of be like, oh my God, I never even thought about it. For me, it was a lot of a quote-unquote kind of bag of tricks of getting the audience to like me.
Well, you're an improv queen.
Right.
So
a lot of it is that relationship with other people, and for me, it was a lot about how do you just exist in the art of it without worrying about how people are going to like it.
It's not competition, so you had to shift paradigms.
Yeah.
You had to go from improv to like writing or just acting out the script.
And just processing it, processing and emotionally preparing and just kind of coming up with different techniques.
Improv?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Well, you got all that technique now.
Well, yeah, and you also learn how to turn it on and off, right? So I know how to tap into it and I know how to leave it behind. And those are really hard things to embody, and they're hard things to verbalize, too.
Wow, you made a really good decision, didn't you?
I did.
Going for that master's.
Yeah, I'm really proud of myself. I don't.
And you also found a partner, a husband.
I did.
Along the way. Let's tell me about that.
Oh my.
What's the scoop?
It's a great story. So my husband and I,
his name is
Cameron.
Oh, Cameron.
Yes,
Does he have a last name?
Nope. No. He's like Madonna.
Okay.
His name's Cameron Hall, and he
not Cameron Wilcher.
No.
Okay.
We keep it separate.
Okay.
Because
do you have his name?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. I got mine.
Professional name.
Yeah, I mean, also I'm 45.
Well,
what am I going to do?
Equity.
I do have my equity
SAG
card.
Or how about SAG?
Not SAG.
No. Okay.
No.
All right. Go ahead.
So we have known each other since we were in high school. He moved to my hometown in high school, and
Tell City. Okay.
Yeah. And he and I were friends. He was the new guy at school, so my group of friends kind of always welcomed new folks because we were just friendly like that. So we kind of had this reputation for always knowing the new kids. And so we were kind of fringe friends and flirty friends, but always just friends. And I had known him forever, and we had lost touch we briefly kind of dated in I want to say our mid-20s. He was a grade behind me. So when I went off to college and then he went off to Ball State, and we kind of lost touch, but we'd always sort of reconnect because both of our parents were teachers in Tell City. And it's a small enough town to where if everybody's a teacher, then the teachers' kids all just kind of know each other. That's just kind of how it goes. And so we kind of had an off again, on again, lost touch, saw each other. I mean, of course, this was all when there were no real cell phones. You didn't have Facebook. It was like you either saw each other when you were home for Christmas or you didn't. And gosh, this was then 2018, cut to 2018, when I had a dream about him. I don't even remember the dream. I just remember he was in my dream. And I thought, gosh, I haven't seen that guy in 10 years. I wonder what he's doing now. And so I sent a message to his mother on Facebook, because this guy has no social media presence whatsoever. He's a very off the grid kind of guy. And so I messaged his mother on Facebook and I said, hey, I hope you're doing well. I just had a random question. I haven't talked to Cameron in a really long time, and he crossed my mind today. I didn't tell her that I had a dream about him. That would have been weird at that time. She knows now. And I said, could I have his phone number? I'd love to say hi. I don't have any new contact information for him. And she said, yeah, here's his phone number. He might be at work. Good luck. Good to hear from you. And I sent him a text message that was just like, hey, it's randomly me. He was living in Evansville at the time, and I was in Michigan at the time. So we were 6 hours apart. I said, hi. Hope I'm not bothering you. You crossed my mind. I just wanted to say hi. Hope you're doing well. Touch and base. Your mom gave me this number, and I hope it's okay. And it was history then. I mean, he texted back immediately, and we just started talking, and then we were long distance for a year and a half, and then he moved to Michigan.
Wow.
I know.
Great story.
And then we got married the week after I graduated from grad school.
Oh, my.
I know. It was a lot.
Was it a big wedding?
No, it was a COVID wedding, so it was little. It was outside in Michigan, out near Saugatuck, and we invited 150, and I think we got about 70.
Oh, wow!
And it was all outside, and it was cool. It was a wonderful wedding.
Did people wear white masks, kind of wedding kind of theme masks?
We had masks available, but by then this was 2021, so a lot of the fear was starting to kind of subside, with especially the knowledge that it was an outdoor wedding. And our reception was in a big tent. We rented a tent for outside, and the yellow and white circus tent was way cheaper than the white tent, so we got a circus tent, which was really fun.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, anybody get COVID from your wedding?
Not that I know of. I think we were good. But that was also at the time where I was like, oof, don't talk about it. So, but I know that we did miss a lot of friends and family because of that, but that's okay.
Maybe you can answer this question, because I've been asking myself. I'm surprised that there are not more films, plays, even musicals. I think there are a couple of like edgy, there have been a few edgy musicals about the quote COVID era, the pandemic. I thought there would be more coming from. Maybe they're still being written.
That's my guess.
Novels, books, movies.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much material there.
I know. I think they're still being written. Yeah, I think that they're still being written. I think there are some references being made for sure, but I'm sure that I think we will see.
I was able to fulfill my need for expression by doing interviews, Zoom interviews, like everybody else. I was on Zoom. I was so isolated. Yeah. Talking to friends and just stay connected with Netflix. And I saw so much great work, by the way. Did you? On
Oh, yeah.
Netflix and Hulu.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it was a reminder that, artists are always going to art. We're always going to make stuff, and that there's going to be an outlet for it.
And in interviewing so many artists, they just kept creating, kept writing music and performing, and, big stars were performing on streaming performances, and they had tip jars.
Yeah.
And they had to make a living.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I remember when they wasn't it Sondheim that had a big, huge celebration, and then everyone was on Zoom.
And recently, Linda Lavin, I interviewed her, and at the time, she had a show online with Billy Stretch and people like that, and, cabaret people. Liz Calloway sung in her living room and in her car. And those were really strange days. And
very strange.
I love the way artists, as they usually do, they keep the country entertained, inspired.
Yeah.
They kept working. They had to do it, though.
Yeah, I mean,
What did you do?
I was in school.
Well,
I was trying to write curriculum for Zoom. It's we were really challenged with because all of that happened while we were mid-semester. I mean, I was about to open a show, and we had dress rehearsal one night, and opening night the university shut down, and everybody got that kind of 2 weeks where we were told it'll be cool in 2 weeks, just lay low for 2 weeks. But of course that didn't happen. So you find ways to adapt, and you kind of do your best. And so we created curriculum for online classes and switched a lot we really learned on the fly of how to do like asynchronous learning, or do you have to come to class at this time, or can I record content and you tap in later, that kind of stuff. I mean, it really opened up a whole world about access needs and about actually, yes, it was a terrible, terrible time, but it also opened up a lot of conversations about how we access what we need to access.
Also, did you, like many professional theaters, did you guys do streaming productions?
We did. I was in actually a production of a new musical that was still being workshopped at the time called Medusa. And I think it's still in workshops in New York with the folks who are still doing that. And, as you know, those workshops last forever. And yeah, so we had a Zoom musical where we learned choreography on the computer, and they shot it in such a way that during the crowd scenes, we were all on the screen, et cetera, et cetera. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Did you actually create any bubbles and actually do a production on stage that was filmed?
Oh, no, we did not.
Like
yeah.
IMT did
sure.
locally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We did not. It was against school rules, and at the time the president of the university was like a communicable disease specialist, so our university was especially locked down. It was really, really stringent on its policies.
And when did you all come back? At least the performing part.
Mm-hmm.
When did that all sort of? How much time before that all happened again?
It came back the semester after I graduated.
Okay.
So our final projects were all virtual,
okay.
Which totally changed a lot of our hearts about it.
Out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Like
but
all those kids who didn't get to graduate with their class.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yes, I feel like I missed out. However, there is comfort in, misery loves company, right? Yeah. And to know that you're kind of not special and that nobody got to have that is mildly makes it okay to know that I'm not alone in that disappointment.
How would you say it affected you personally or your psyche?
For me,
pandemic.
That's a good question. I look back on that time and who I am now. I feel like I am a lot more forgiving with myself and with people who may not. I don't want to say perform, but who may not. Who may not. Bring their best self in the way that I think is supposed to be, right? I mean, it changed everyone so profoundly, and I am not a person to be able to judge how it affected anybody else. And so all I can do is kind of accept what I'm getting. And I think I do a way better job now of recognizing what is quote unquote important and what is not. Mm-hmm. I don't get worked up over little stuff like that because it's just not worth it. And it doesn't matter.
A lot of people claim that they did that. People got reflective, and then many just went on to business as usual. But
sure.
It sounds like it did have a profound impact.
I think so. Yeah.
Life changing in a way that.
Yeah.
Did you learn how to be? Did you learn to be more quiet and more reflective in general, or?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, but you also had company. You had someone in your life.
And at the time I was falling in love, and I was shacking up with my soon-to-be husband who moved to Michigan to be with me. Right, so I had a lot of other stuff going on. Oh yeah, we did have a bubble.
Did you learn how to cook or sew or embroider or do any of that kind of stuff?
I love to cook anyway.
Okay.
I probably just cooked a lot more.
Okay.
And I like my own company. It's not really hard for me to kind of hang out with myself. Right. I don't feel the need to busy myself with a lot of things.
You make yourself laugh?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
Oh, I was dying to ask you.
Yeah.
We need to get to intimacy direction.
Yeah.
I have so many questions.
Okay.
Ripped from the headlines right now.
Yeah.
But tell me, did you watch the SNL comedy?
I did.
And, I wrote in something I wrote about you, I said, she could be on SNL in a minute.
Yeah.
And did I imagine this, or did you audition and you got close, or was it Second City? You auditioned for? No. Okay.
I auditioned for Mike and Molly on TV.
That's right.
Yeah. I was very close on Mike and Molly, which just happened to be such a weird phenomenon.
Your comedy is so reminiscent of
Melissa McCarthy.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The physical
I mean,
comedy.
there's a reason why she was cast in that show and I was close. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but when they get that close, everybody's going to kind of bring a similar vibe.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a bad thing to be compared to her.
No,
Of
she's
course
brilliant.
not.
And so
Yeah.
many people, after I didn't get that show, so many people were like, I'm never watching anything she's in. And I'm like, I'm watching everything she's in. She's amazing.
She was on did you watch that special?
I did, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was great.
I mean, was it mind-boggling? What'd you think?
I mean, I loved it. I have such fond feelings for that kind of comedic bond that people have, because I've experienced it too. And I think what is so fun to watch about that is, I think if you don't perform and you're not an artist and you can watch that and you can love it and you can wish that you were a part of a gang that close knit. And for me, the beauty of it is knowing that feeling exists everywhere. That feeling exists in clubs all over the place. And it's the same kind of feeling that casts get when they get bonded, right? So it's that level of familiarity and like fun and closeness is not a feeling that is foreign to me. And that's what makes it so fun to watch.
I never pursued theater professionally. And one of the reasons why is I'm not emotionally equipped to get tight with the cast, bond with them, and when it all goes away, I grieve. I have a really hard. I just said I couldn't do this.
It's too much.
No.
Yeah, interesting.
You promise, okay, let's have lunch, and you have a few lunches and a couple of dinners, and then they move on.
Yeah,
and so that comes with the territory.
It absolutely does, and it's hard, but it's also part of like the fleeting beauty of it all.
Julie Harris talked about how James Dean. I interviewed her once. I did a doc on him, and she talked about how she heard him crying in his dressing room. And she said, Jimmy, what's wrong? He says, I'm just so sad because we build these dreams and then we tear them all down and then we go our separate ways.
I love that part, though. I mean, saying goodbye is always hard, but I love that because it just shows how capable we are of like investing emotionally in the people around us. I think that's why I love people. I mean, and I love tight-knit stuff. I love having a gang of people. Yeah. It's what makes it truly, it's just...
I don't know if you're like me. I'm sure that it wasn't until theater that you found you had your
people. Yeah, you find your people.
Did it happen to you too?
Yeah, and I was lucky that it happened to me early. I mean, I did shows when I was really little in my community, and it was something that is the feeling that I always pursued. I mean, I love to be on stage and to do something and for people to clap for me. That's part of also why we do it. But I just love people who want to connect emotionally. I do. I can't help it. I love big feelings. I love talking about feelings. Yeah. My husband does not. So I got it. But I always say that's okay because I get it elsewhere. I get that elsewhere.
Well, I've had to grudgingly admit that, I love a good chick flick. And being a gay man, of course, I embrace all of my feelings, male and female. Yeah. But I can still cry.
Yeah.
I can still cry.
What's your favorite chick flick?
Oh, God.
A favorite. I don't want to put the pressure on the favorite.
Well, God. Here's a guy who watches, Hallmark, those cheesy Hallmarks.
Man.
They just get
my father-in-law really loves the Hallmark movie. He really does.
So let's talk about intimacy direction.
Sure.
Okay. Well, the other night we saw Lively and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on her husband's name in the crowd, and they were
where
on SNL.
Oh,
okay.
sure, yeah. Okay.
Well,
Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
And I was like, where are you going with this, Tom?
I'm all over the place.
You really are.
Forgive me.
It's okay. I'm vibing.
I only have you for a short time.
No, it's all good.
You got to stay with me. Okay?
I'm here. I'm on the ride. Okay. I think I'm just like in the car behind you, but I'm cool.
Well, you're improv. You should be.
Yeah, I'm right there.
So, but anyway, there's that moment where Tina Fey and Amy Poehler are asking the audience questions, and they said, "So how are you?" And she said, "Yeah. Well, what have you heard?"
Yeah, and they said, "Nothing. Everything's totally cool."
Okay, which takes us to the controversy. So, what do you think? What's the truth in your mind?
Can I be really honest with you?
I want you to be brutally honest.
My brutal honesty is I have not engaged with that at all. I have not engaged with any of that material. I know that there's a little bit. I know that there is controversy. I know that there is what people are saying that happened, but I can't even tell you what it's about.
Okay.
I'm not a media in that way. I'm not like a celebrity headlines kind of gal. It just is not my bag.
What are you? I was dying.
I can't tell you.
On that.
I can tell you all about intimacy direction, but I don't know what happened with the two of them and the three of them, et cetera, et cetera.
It sounds to me like a he said, she said. You know?
Yeah.
And there's somewhere the truth's in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But let's talk about those are the kind of issues, the reason why who started this movement?
Sure. Yeah. So intimacy direction is a movement that sprang up out of the Me Too movement, which was started by Tarana Burke in 2006. So Tarana Burke was a woman who ran, I believe it was like summer camps and retreats for young women who survived domestic violence or sexual assault. And she ended up starting this kind of anonymous web page where women could kind of tell their story. And that was the Me Too movement. And a lot of people think Me Too started with Harvey Weinstein in 2015, but it started in 2006. And so Tarana Burke started that, kept that website going for a long, long time. Then it got a resurgence with Harvey Weinstein in 2015 when all that came out about him and his abuses and his abusive behavior and sexual assault in the industry. In 2015, that started the kind of pop culture Me Too movement that we kind of know it as today. And from that kind of sprang up a lot more conversations about how artists, like their pathways of communication when something does happen, or why shame is felt, why we keep these things private, why the arts are kind of a breeding ground for toxic behavior. And the power dynamics kind of swirling all around that.
Side.
Yeah,
I guess I really thought about
that.
The
power dynamics of a director wanting something to happen intimate in a play, and since the actors kind of don't feel like they have the agency to be able to say that's actually I'm not cool with that, or it's against my own personal boundaries, and also because as actors, we are trained to say yes, we're trained to be people pleasing, we're trained to do it because we want to get the next gig, et cetera, et cetera. There are all these kinds of things about power dynamics that swirl around that activity. And so I am trained by a company called IDC, which is Intimacy Directors and Coordinators. It's one of the kind of predominant companies that is doing all of these trainings.
So you get this in your master's program.
So I got interested in it in grad school because my professor was a certified intimacy director through IDC. Gotcha. And when I say certified, I want to be clear. This is not a national certification. This is not something that is like a lawful piece of paper that says this, that, and the other. I am certified through the company I was trained through, which means I have a certain amount of hours, a certain amount of shows under my belt, a certain amount of training and mentorship. I'm vetted through that company. So I'm certified only through that company. It doesn't mean that I am a better intimacy director than, somebody else who has done a different training and come to the same results, if that makes sense. So the company that I work with started around that same time, around 2016. It was started by Tonya Sina, who was in her grad program at Virginia Commonwealth. And she was a fight director and a choreographer. And there were people in her final project who said, hey, we've got this intimate, I think it was a lap dance. Like there was a lap dance that was on a show they were working on. And knowing that she had a background in dance and in staged violence, they were like, can you just kind of like put eyes on it and see? Because my actors are real kind of robotic and there's not a lot of heat there and et cetera, right? All the things that we kind of think of when we think sexy or a romantic connection or chemistry, quote unquote, right? Such a vague term. And she says, sure. So she starts doing this for other people. She starts realizing this is actually something that might be needed in the industry. At the same time, there were conversations swirling about Harvey Weinstein. There were conversations swirling around the storefront theaters in Chicago, where a lot of this toxic behavior was starting to kind of come out. And it just was kind of this tornado of information that people were suddenly kind of speaking up and saying, yeah, actually, my time on this movie set or my time in this theater production. And I mean, who among us as actors has been in a staged kiss moment where we are expected to kind of figure it out ourselves or save it to the last moment because the director has feelings about like, I feel icky about it and I don't, So this kind of all became codified and with IDC. It used to be called IDI, Intimacy Directors International, and then it kind of morphed into what it is today. There are a few companies that train, that practice.
And do you pay to take this course?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like any other. It's like as if you were going to go be a fight director and you go take level 1, level 2. Now I've got this, that, and the other. So it really created a common language around it.
Just to establish your credentials.
Yes, exactly.
So that you didn't teach yourself.
Yeah, and I just didn't walk up and go, yeah, I got it. I'm a trained intimacy director.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carry some weight.
Yeah, it does carry some weight. And this work has been going on in theater spaces and rehearsal rooms all over for years and years and years. What this movement did was kind of create common language around it. And it's still really new to a lot of people.
And especially with the advent of cable, starting with HBO, stuff that Sex and the City, I watch that now, and, think about the stuff that they're doing on that show.
Yeah.
It's pretty much a soft porn.
I mean, it's vulnerable, right? I mean, it's so vulnerable.
So, to make it look realistic.
Yeah. Yeah, and we, as audience members, we want realistic. We want that realism. We want it to be believable, right?
But what letting the audience use their imagination.
Right.
Some things you can't fake. Close-ups of people kissing.
Correct. Right.
Touching.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so what I do as an intimacy director is I go in and I have conversations with actors. I go in and have a conversation with the director and say, what do you want this to look like? What are you feeling in this moment? And then we talk to actors and say, this is what we're envisioning. So I'm kind of the neutral party, right? I'm there to kind of be the liaison between director and actor to say, here's what director's envisioning. How are you feeling about that? And is anything feeling stressful for you, or like what you thinking? And it kind of creates an even playing field for all performers so that, if you have a seasoned actor who's been in every show and is revered by the community and is, can kind of quote unquote do no wrong. And then we have this new person new to the scene trying to break into it, wants to be good, wants to be the pleaser of everyone around, but maybe they don't feel like they have the power to be able to say, actually, to be in XYZ position doesn't feel safe for me.
And it's clear it was never a myth that some people, in order to get to the top, they felt that they had to, become involved in this situation with the director or producer.
Yeah, and that was the whole thing about, that was what really broke about the Chicago Theater, Profiles Theater, which was a huge story. The guy who was the lead actor there was really revered and, would just really exercise the power dynamics and abuse of power,
hurt people's careers,
and harmed their psyche. You know what I mean? So I'm there as, I don't want to say a safeguard. I'm just there as an extra person who is trained in the communication of these ways, and then also as a person to help enhance the sexiness of a moment or the realistic feelings of the moment.
Well, now it is omnipresent in the business.
Right?
Ubiquitous.
It's at least starting to become really. If you don't use intimacy directors, you know what they are.
And then it goes both ways. It's not only women, they're men. There are a lot of men.
Oh, yeah. One of my closest friends who I was trained with is a man, and he practices in Philadelphia.
Otherwise, they could be put in these days in film. There's a new film that just come out, or a new the White Lotus series. And Patrick Schwarzenegger apparently does a full nude on, but I'm sure there is somebody involved in that production.
Absolutely.
They walk through it. Is this gratuitous? Why am I doing it?
Yep.
And then you walk through all that.
Absolutely. And they're there on set with
what about the technical part? Is the director involved about how we want you to shoot this?
Yeah.
The angles.
Yeah.
How close?
Yes, absolutely. It's angles, it's modesty garments. So if it's full nudity, can we cover up something? Can we have them in a thong type situation so they don't feel completely exposed? There are lots of different ways to show that.
You say, we don't need to use those.
Yeah.
This is acting.
Yes, and that's
who hasn't seen this before?
Absolutely, and that's a thing.
What's his name? Who did Full On, the comedian? You know who I'm talking about.
I don't.
And that's why he sort of made his reputation, because he right off the bat in a comedy.
Sure.
Showed his
all of it.
his
Yeah.
track, yeah.
And that's okay too. I think that the thing to remember is that as long as everyone is fully informed,
Yeah.
then it's all good.
Yeah.
It just has to be everybody on board, right? It takes more than that actor being like, I don't need it, I'm cool. Well, what about the cameraman, right? Or what about the woman that you are in the scene with, right? Everybody has to be in full consensual agreement.
Of stuff like that happening in front of a group of people.
Yeah, exactly.
The crew.
And we don't know.
A closed set.
Yeah. And we don't know the lived experiences of everybody in that room, right? We don't know if someone has suffered a trauma and this is only going to be harmful to that. And so as long as everybody is informed, they can be in choice. And if they are in choice about how they come to the room, great.
So how much experience do you have to have in that role?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't all, not everyone has a background in psychology,
Sure.
for instance, or training.
Sure.
But obviously, you have to have some knowledge of psychology, do you not?
So, yes and no. So, there's nothing... this position is like it's not like hey, if you're going to use guns in this film, you have to have a firearms expert in the room, et cetera, right? There are now some regulations in SAG-AFTRA about intimacy coordination, but theater still does not have that. We don't have, because there's so much gray area as far as what might be needed and necessary. But my training through IDC is really the thing that kind of for me sets it apart. Is it's incredibly rigorous, it's incredibly holistic. I'm trained not only in how to, in movement and how to make these angles look real and where does my hip go if I'm showing, penetration from behind. Like that's all the mechanics, right? But I also have to have robust training in like mental health first aid, allyship and advocacy, how to have transparent conversations, how to conflict mediation, power dynamics training. So it's for me, it's less about, we're not therapists, right? It's less about that.
That's why I asked that.
But more about like how to have a conversation about it and stay neutral and recognize the power dynamics in the room, who needs to be talked to in this way, who needs to be talked to in this way, and how to advocate for other people as well as yourself, how to set boundaries around the work that you're doing, how to encourage boundaries in other people. It's really robust training. It took a long time. I mean, it wasn't like I took one class and I was done. It took a couple years.
I'm beginning to see in the local market that, when you returned home, that seemed to me that you sort of started this movement locally. Am I wrong? I think you were the spearhead.
I think I have been. Yeah.
I saw your name on programs. So
yeah.
I started to see your name in different programs, and now there are other people in town who do the same thing, but. It seems like you're very much in demand.
Well, it's still a grassroots campaign here in Indianapolis. I mean, we're not Chicago, we're not Atlanta, we're not, big city that has these kind of standards. And I love, like I said earlier, I love my community. I love Indianapolis, but we are Midwest nice, and we are still kind of in that place of, we'll figure it out, it'll be fine. And so I'm happy to be the person in the room to help advocate for that. I'm so happy there are more people who are getting trained and are coming forward to be those people in the room. I was really lucky enough, when I went to grad school, I kept all my friendships and contacts are still very much intact from that. So I was really able. It's really a lovely thing about Indianapolis is that it's small enough that you can stay connected to folks and know that the work is going to continue, that theater's kind of not going anywhere. We've managed to persevere through COVID, through, ups and downs of theaters opening and closing, et cetera, et cetera. So I was able to know what projects were happening down the pike and kind of get attached to those. I think the first thing I did while I was still in Michigan is I did Alabaster at the Phoenix that Jolene Moffat directed. And Jolene and I are good friends, and she knew I was studying this, and so she reached out to me and said, hey, would you come down and chat? And my practice has, of course, evolved and grown and changed since that first one. And I mean, of course, God, was I nervous, right? Going into that rehearsal and saying, now I'm the intimacy director and no one's my mentor and I'm here and I'm doing it, right? But it was a really great situation to come back and kind of have that sort of already in my pocket to bring to theaters. And now I have to say no a lot because of just because of limits.
Well, you're busy. You're also you're also performing all over the place.
Yeah.
I particularly loved you as I don't know because of copyright, you couldn't use her name, Miss Piggy.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And with the men's chorus.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, you
and Aaron and yeah.
Oh, you guys are just, it was a wonderful script.
That was so
I
fun.
know Stephen McCoy was involved in that. He didn't take credit for it, but he's got a great sense of humor.
Yes, and Aaron and I are actually, we are emceeing the men's chorus.
The New York Aaron, Yuletide Aaron.
Yes, we are emceeing the big fundraiser for them.
Would you tell him to quit ghosting me?
Oh, yeah, he's the worst.
But no,
I will tell him.
I just loved his, and again, we can't call him his character's name.
Yeah. But we all know.
The green frog.
The green frog.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, he was marvelous.
He's wonderful.
His rendition of Rainbow Connection, just like... Oh.
Yeah. We would cry nightly.
I saw you at that character in IRT, and Claire, I did not recognize you.
Isn't that funny?
How many times I see you on stage, I did not recognize you. For me, as a critic, that is very telling. I
love it.
Yeah,
that's fun.
You get past me, and it's like, and I believed it.
Well, it's funny that you say that. Thank you. And that's funny that you say that because I had a friend whose mom saw that show. It was the folks at home at IRT. And they texted her and said, I don't know why they brought that person in from out of town. Claire Wilcher would have done just as good of a job. And she had to text her mom and say, that was Claire Wilcher.
There is no better compliment for an actor.
I'll take it.
For those who don't know what we're talking about, what was that show?
The Folks at Home.
Okay. And what else have you done in the last couple of years?
So this past year I did What the Constitution Means to Me, which was with American Lives Theater.
Of course.
And then I did White City Murder before that with Ben Asekwe, that 2-person musical. And I did the men's chorus. I sang with South Pacific with the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra, who I love to work with. They're wonderful folks there.
You were one of the nurses.
I was the head nurse. Her name was Dinah, which is always a pleasure. I love the symphony folks, and they're just the kindest, and so they're always fun to work with.
Jack and Ty are the best. Yeah.
They're the best guys. When I auditioned for them, that was a million years ago, and it was such a memory that I have of being at their house, and it was really fun. It was really fun.
And what else have you done? Have you done Beef and Boards yet?
I have not. I intimacy directed for Beef and Boards, but the problem with Beef and Boards is oftentimes their schedule does not line up with my schedule because I've just been so booked that I have not been able to make it work.
Have you made any kind of cameos at Comedy Sports?
I have not.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think it's time? I mean,
I don't know. It's kind of... I've done a couple of improv shows with the folks from Comedy Sports out at Red Curb Comedy, which was in Avon and now is with the Fringe Festival, or with the IF building. Is it the IF? IF?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Wait a minute. Did you do a Defiance Comedy?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. You haven't been with those guys?
I have not. But I mean, I'm friends with all those folks. And so I'd love to see that thriving. I just don't know if it's just for me right now.
Right.
Sure. I mean... I really love my downtime.
Yeah.
I used to really pack it in. Yeah. And I know I am a busy person, but I really have a lot more downtime than I ever used to.
What would you like to do ahead? What are some things you'd like to do?
I would love to do a full-scale musical again. It's been a long time. I mean, singing with the men's chorus and the symphony kind of scratched that itch. But I kind of always considered myself a singer before anything else. And
what a singer you are.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And so I would love to do a musical again where I get to fully rehearse it.
I've always thought someone should write there was our late friend, I don't know if you knew Sue Hour.
Oh, yeah. I loved Sue.
Reminiscent of her.
That's a fantastic compliment.
Stage presence and your larger-than-life personality. She did a Sophie Tucker cabaret.
It's one of the first things I saw in town when I moved here. She was so great.
And, I would love to see you do like a Sophie Tucker or Ethel Merman.
Oh, yeah.
You could do it, Ethel Merman.
Yeah.
I love. Would you love to do Ethel?
I would. I actually did a whole project on her in grad school about Ethel Merman because I love how petty she was because her like chapter in her biography about which one of her husbands. I forget which one, but apparently it was so horrible. The chapter is like titled her husband, and then it's a blank page.
I would love to hear you do Ethel Merman's disco record.
Oh my gosh. She's so great. She's just, those kinds of characters in the artistic world. I was talking about this at work the other day. Those kinds of characters just don't exist anymore, right? That level of like the trademark personality and the quirks. I think we're all just boring.
Yeah.
We're all just boring anymore.
Yeah. Well, in the comedy spectrum, who are some of your favorite comedians?
Oh, gosh. I mean, Melissa McCarthy, of course, and it's also hard not to identify with her because she's also a fat actor. And so, she lives in a marginalized body and has managed to have this amazing career that has kind of defied all odds. And she's so beloved and just known for being a really kind and fun person to work with.
She owns it.
Yeah. And so I love her. I really don't have a lot of icons like that. I just like funny people. I think it's so funny. I think I backed off of having those kinds of icons because I have so many friends who are so rad that I don't need them. They're so awesome that I'm just like, famous, I don't care. This is my best friend Chad, who just makes me laugh anytime we're together. That's my kind of
Gotcha.
laughter. That's like the connecty stuff. I love it. And I mean, watching SNL was that kind of feeling,
Sure.
of all the guys in my $3 bill sketch group that I did for so long in the mid 2010s, and those guys are just my brothers, and they mean everything to me, and they're still so funny, and they've got wives and kids now, and yet they still just bring it. I love funny people.
You stay in touch with those folks?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Are you all Facebook friends?
We
social
are.
media?
Yeah, and we all met up and did a show out at Red Curb. My friend Will, who runs that theater and has now moved from Avon, now back down to the Fringe, he did a goodbye to that theater, and so we had been doing comedy together for 20 years, and we all went back and did some long form and some silly improv, and it was wonderful.
I'm going to close with this question, and it's a given, really, but I know that when I was a young theater student, I really needed direction, and, and I had a great foundation, and I'll never forget the 3 theater professors I had. They had major impact on me. But you were in that position as a teacher, so you certainly were able to give plenty of advice to a lot of young performers. For those listening who might be considering a life in the performing arts, what would you say?
I would say, when you're young and you have the energy and you don't know anybody, say yes to everything. Say yes to every piddly gig, every little thing. You're not going to get paid for it, and you're going to feel like it's a bummer, but do it. Say yes. You'll learn so much. And then my second one is, you don't have to go to a big city to make an artistic life work for you. You may have to dig into the nooks and crannies a little bit more and teach this class and teach that class and say yes to this gig and do that thing and do the gig that you really want to do that doesn't pay much, but that I think there's a lot of people, a lot of young people especially, who, they do a few shows and then they go to New York because they think that's what it's got to be. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Dream your dreams, dream big, go do it up. But go do something else in between first. Try it all. And also, theater's not going anywhere. It's a long game. It's a long game. People who get a big break are rare. And those are the ones we see because they're the famous ones, or they're the ones that we read about online. That's really rare. It's work. It's work. And it truly, you got to have talent, of course. But if people don't want to work with you, then your talent doesn't matter. You gotta be kind. You gotta want to get to know people. You need to talk to everyone. Make friends with the crew. Make friends with the box office, right? You have to make the connection. That's how you get the gig again. Not by being a people pleaser, but by just connecting to people. That's how you get the next gig, is because people want to be in the room with you. Yeah.
Well said.
Thanks.
And it's so great to hear about your graduate school years and this intimacy direction, because those are things that I have not kept track of.
Yeah, totally.
And it sounds like you have a beautiful relationship and Yeah, do a lot of cooking for him?
I do. I do a lot of cooking for actually for everybody. A lot of people in my life.
Yeah.
I like to cook for people. Yeah.
Well, listen, I'm looking for my invite.
All right.
I like a good home cooked meal.
Yeah? Like just a meat and a starch and a veggie? I got you.
That's all I need.
All right,
to
good.
survive.
I got you.
Okay, well, I'm sure that at some point I'm going to have you come on to do a part 2 because there's so much more that I'd love to talk to you
Sure.
about. But again, I'm sure you got some rehearsal or something you're working on.
Always something to work on. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for coming on again.
Thank you, Tom.
And I'm sure I'll see you, working out.
Yeah, see you at the gym.
Doing those stretches.
Heck yeah.
That's where we hang out.
I know. Thanks, Tom.
I saw, by the way, I have to tell you that
Yeah.
Deb Sargent, Deb?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Deb works out at that gym, too.
Oh, she does?
And
I can't wait to see her.
I said, so Deb, can you believe that we're at this point in our lives and we're seniors and we're here
Yeah.
on the computer waves?
Uh-huh.
She says, well, I'm lucky to be here at all.
That's right. That's right. I love that. That's awesome.
Okay, well, thanks again.
Yeah.
And see you down the road.
Sounds great.
Our thanks go out to our media sponsor, Urban Times. Urban Times is a monthly news magazine which serves as the official neighborhood newsletter for 16 Indianapolis neighborhoods, offering news about development, arts and entertainment, and from the business community.
Who will take center stage on the podcast next? Your seat on the aisle with Tom Alvarez awaits. Follow Tom on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and make sure to visit tomalvarez.studio. Watch Tom every other Thursday on Lifestyle Live on Wish TV, and make sure to listen every week here on the All Indiana Podcast Network.